Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming today. This event is one in our series on sustainability in the law, and we are very honored and very pleased to have with us today Professor Diana Cerini from the University of Milan, Bicocca. And Professor Cerini is a full professor of comparative private law, and she has many different academic and industry roles, an impressive publication record. She's particularly interested at the moment in sustainability and climate change. She also researches in insurance law. She speaks many languages, and so it's a great pleasure to have you here today, Diana.
Thanks.
And so we'll start with Diana's presentation on artificial intelligence and sustainability. And then we have a second shorter intervention by our colleague, Dr. Theodora Christou, later on in this session. So I hand over to you, Diana. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here, and most of all, thanks to Francisca Arnaud-Duer, my colleague, for inviting me to have this presentation today. And I hope this would be a dialogue among us. So I will present to you some notes and my thoughts on these topics, and I hope that this could be, as I say, the dialogue with many questions of your sides on these very interesting topics. So my topic of discussion today will be sustainability and artificial intelligence combined, so to say. And let me say that, of course, it's quite difficult from a certain point of view to talk about these two topics, because of course they are both at the center of discussions, not only from the legal point of view, of course, but from practitioners, for stakeholders, for everybody, for citizens. And what we can say is that, of course, sustainability is not really a new topic, because we talk about sustainability since decades, but it has new paths on the way. And at the same time, artificial intelligence, what is artificial intelligence? It's so difficult to define natural intelligence, so how can we define artificial intelligence? But we need to do that, and we will see that the law needs to do that, because law has to put boundaries. And that is why in particular, it is necessary to look closer to artificial intelligence ongoing processes, because artificial intelligence is not just what scientists define as incremental innovation, but it's mostly a radical innovation. What does it mean? It means that a radical innovation obliges to change your mind, to change the path, to change the legal taxonomy that in the end concerns the rules connected to artificial intelligence. So that's what radical innovations determine. So talking about the two together might be difficult, but most of all, it recalls to our mind many topics. And that is why I just try to touch some point of discussion, and allow me to say that I try to do that in a quite discretionary way. So I will first consider some quite fundamental issues on sustainability and artificial intelligence in the EU legal framework. Then I will look at sustainability of artificial intelligence in a few words, and then I will check if and how artificial intelligence can be a tool for reaching sustainability goals. And as I said, there were many aspects and grounds to take into considerations. I will focus on two aspects that I'm dealing with quite often, and that is to say application of artificial intelligence systems to mobility, and in particular smart mobility of cars. And another sector is the application of artificial intelligence systems to healthcare solutions. So I will try to build my discussion today on these aspects. So let's start from sustainability. As I said, sustainability is not a new concept, of course. It dates back already some decades, and it took the path, especially from discussion concerning first scientific approaches to climate change, to the environmental impact. And in its essence, in any case, it concerns the diachronic perspective of development, because sustainability consists in fulfilling the needs of the current generations, but without compromising the needs of future generations. So the difficult task is to ensure a balance between economic growth, environmental care, and social well-being, not just for the actual moment, but for the future generations. And the essence of this notion is so important that we find it in many constitutions today. Even the Italian constitution, just to let you know, was recently modified in order to build this concept of the interest of future generation. And this is absolutely in line with the Declaration of Rio, and even before, of many other declarations concerning environmental and climate change issues in general. And if we look at that, what changed during the decades? The idea that sustainability has become a pantographic approach to life and to development, because if at the beginning it mainly concerned the environment, it then moved to in larger perspectives to governance, so to what companies, to what professionals do, to what the economic organization and practical organization of activities implies. But most of all, it led to include the notion of social sustainability. Of course, we know it very well because the acronym ESG implies all this. But if we look at the social sustainability in particular, which completes this three-part idea of sustainability, this is the newest one, so to say, because it implies a combination of development, activities, innovations, the attention to the environment, but most of all, it could be summarized in this sentence: put people first. The idea that progress, innovation, and even the climate change fights, so to say, should not compromise the well-being of people, because people should remain at the center. And so the idea of putting people first in the development process implies that social sustainability should also promote social inclusion of all citizens, all countries, not only citizens. So it has to assume quite a global perspective. And we will see that better in the EU perspective. It implies also that development should be realized respecting and taking consideration of fundamental rights of people. And as I said, if we look at the European Treaty, we can find in some way all these aspects already in the treaty, because if we look at Article 3.3, the sustainable development is as the basis of the economic growth of Europe, of the European, not only market, but of the European Union. But here already there is a reference also to social exclusion, to need to combat social exclusion, the need to have a social justice, and the fact that every process should be performed in the approach of solidarity among people, among countries. At the same time, there's also another fundamental notion to be taken into consideration, and this is extremely important with the connection of sustainability to artificial intelligence improvements, because it is the fact that environmental protection must be integrated in the definition and implementation of union policies and activities, in particular in promoting sustainable development. What does it mean? It means that it is not just up to companies, to those who promote in their professional activities artificial intelligence, but Europe as a whole has a role in promoting this, in the sense that also the financing of all these activities requires a choice, policy choices by the institution. And if we go on, well, the European Treaties is a source of, immense source of principle, definitions and goals in itself, said in a very technical way. We also find a reference to the principle of precaution. What is the principle of precaution? It's said by the treaty at Article 191, and the basic idea of the principle of precaution was intended once again with reference to the environment. But if we look at the actual legislation and policies of the European Union, the principle of precaution is essential in every choice, in every regulation and rules, because it implies that the European Union set the rules for the access to the market of a certain activity, of a new process, of a new product, of a new pharmaceutical treatment, of everything. So there's a preventive approach in order to protect, once again, the fundamental rights that are protected by the European Treaty. And at the same time, if and when the preventive approach is not well performing and damages occur anyway, then there must be a protection, a compensation, a system of compensation of victims. And if we put these all together, like putting a fil rouge among the principle of precaution, the sustainable development approach, in the end, we come to the idea that all this has to be performed with a gradual approach that takes into consideration the just transition. Once again, we see through the decades of the European law history that one main point is the just transition, or said in other words, social justice. So what does it mean? It means that innovation, progress, even sustainability have costs, and it risks, these costs risk to leave someone behind once again. So just transition means being fair. It implies a notion of fairness, which we are very well used to deal with in contract law, in tort law, in company law. But here the idea of just transition is the just transition among generations, but also among people, among geographic areas. And so we have to put all these notions together in order to understand how the sustainability process has to be performed. And we have a lot of legal references, specific positive legal references of the just transition mechanism. I will not go too much into that, but eventually we can go back with your questions. So let's move also to some other legal sources, which I will just go through very quickly. This is not just general principle, this is not just ideas that we discuss among academics, but it has a very strong impact on professionals, on companies, every companies, because the range of companies involved have enlarged through the years. And for example, if we look at a regulation, so when we say regulation, hard European law regulation. If you look at the regulation on taxonomy, for example, it's already 2020, number 852. It identifies the 6 environmental goals. This regulation is mainly focused on the perspective of environmental sustainability, but there are also some other aspects of social sustainability inside that will be later developed in other rules and directives. But you can see that the idea is that these sustainability goals has to be not just identified, but measured. The taxonomy implies that in the end, the companies are observed and they have to be very strict according to their goals and to what they do in their everyday activity, because there's the principle of doing not harm. What does it mean? It means that the activity performed has to be measured according to the legal taxonomy and to the impact it has in very concrete terms. You see this slide, there are some references, does not significantly harm any of the environmental objectives set out in the regulations. And so it's something very practical. If you are in a compliant office of a company, if you are working in a company, you deal with that every day. You cannot do without. So there is a ground also for professional teaching because it's quite complex. There's a word, let me say also to you and to all the colleagues, everybody has a word that comes to its mind immediately, complexity, because it is not an easy regulation, an easy set of rules. Also because it continues to be implemented. For example, we wait for a new directive, which in my view is very important, and it is the directive on corporate sustainability due diligence. Why is that so important? Because it observes not only the position of the single company, but it observes in some way the supply chain. So all the activity of a company, also in connection with consolidated business relationships. This is an ongoing process of approval of this proposal of directive. There will be probably some changes because according to some observers, it is too strong for companies. It could give them a too hard burden, especially in the control of extra EU companies. But you see here how fast the cultural approach moves. Companies should be in control of the supply chain. They are responsible, not just responsible, but liable eventually, not only for what they do, but also for what their partners do. And they have a duty, an obligation eventually to check, and if requirements are not fit, they have liabilities in case of violation. So let's move to the other topic, artificial intelligence. Well, once again, artificial intelligence is a word in itself because it's not just an innovation as we are used to. The last probably radical innovation we had was the internet revolution. Now we are in front of another radical innovation, as I said, and radical innovation obliged to change the path, to have a very different approach. And artificial intelligence can be used in many aspects of life, of services, of the justice, criminal justice, civil justice, administrative justice. And in some way, there is the idea of the human kind that can recreate the essential qualities of intelligence. As I said, it's not easy to qualify intelligence. We are still discussing if animals are intelligent, but at the same time, and of course they are, there's no doubt, but it took quite a long time to have them in black letters in every discipline. But the idea that the humankind can recreate forms of intelligence that becomes artificial intelligence. You see here the puppets that were autonomous dating back from the 19th centuries. And now this has developed, of course, a lot. We have studies and examples and a lot of analysis. So I will not go into this, but what we know is that, of course, as we are among lawyers, mainly lawyers, I think, people studying law, we need qualification because we are quite annoying, quite boring lawyers. We have a law approach, and as we have to make rules, we also need to identify. And it's not easy. And I think it's one of the few cases in which even the EU law admitted quite openly. It's difficult to qualify artificial intelligence. And in fact, if we look at the acts in progress, because we do not have hard law, very precise hard law on the matter, but we will soon, very soon have. Just a few days ago, another step of the approval was completed. In the premises of the Artificial Intelligence Act, it is defined in very general terms in Article 7.1 as a family of technologies in development. So the EU legislature, taking into consideration the result of the work of the expert groups that have worked on this topic, knows that it's developing every day. It's difficult to stay close to the development. And even in Article 3, so in the rules to be, the hard part of the Artificial Intelligence Act that will be soon in force, Article 3, once again, gives a definition not of artificial intelligence. It was too ambitious, of course, even looking at the different proposals of scientists and so on. But it defines it as systems that uses artificial intelligence solutions. And it opens the ground to an ongoing process. And in fact, there is an annex to the Artificial Intelligence Act, so that it will be easier probably to adjourn this notion of artificial intelligence system. But that considered, we sort of have a common consensus of what artificial intelligence is. Open to amendment, a family of new technologies that try to reproduce some aspects of the human intelligence. What is important is that, once again, Europe is not passive. It's not neutral towards artificial intelligence. It wants to have a role, not only a role. Generally, Europe is not so willing to be a global model as, I don't know, the Chinese legislation, the American legislation, the legislator, the French, because in Europe, the French legislation quite often wants to be a model. But here, it's Europe. They want to be a model. The European legislature want to be a model for regulation of artificial intelligence. And there's a basic assumption. Why do we need regulation? Why do we need regulation? Because the European legislatures have understood that the changes and the challenging to fundamental values is so high that there is a need of regulation. And another chapter of the discussion, of course, could be how efficient could a regulation at the EU level be? Because of course, who is the regulator in this global market of artificial intelligence? Is the lawyer, is it a legislator, or are there other silent regulators? But anyway, Europe wants to be a regulator, and the idea is, of course, that a regulation, a legal habitat where artificial intelligence can develop is needed because from one side, as it is quite well stated by the European Commission, even in 2020, the use of AI system can have a significant role in achieving a sustainable development goals and in supporting the democratic process and social rights. So there is a value judgment. There's already a judgment of the European Union. It is something positive. The European Union is not neutral, as I said. AI system can play a pivotal role in the process of sustainability, even looked at the social approach. But at the same time, artificial intelligence has to be governed because it might be a danger too. It might be a danger for competition among professionals. Not everybody has full access of AI systems or at the knowledge of how AI systems are practically governed. So there's an issue of competition among professionals, among companies in and out and from outside Europe. There's a need to protect consumers from a substantial point of view. So rules on liabilities, rule for the access to the market. And this is essential to enhance trust, to enhance consumer and citizen confidence in artificial intelligence, because it's something new. And even sometimes citizens don't even know they are using artificial intelligence, but if they use it, they have to be, to have confidence. They need to be sure, to feel safe using artificial intelligence or knowing that artificial intelligence is used. And most of all, that's a very political assumption. We are in the European Union, not you, sorry. Maybe will you come back? But of course, Italy is and will be in the European Union. But anyway, the approach of the European Union is essential because it has taken years, decades to create the European Union, not just the European market, the single market, but the European Union, where citizens have the same rights, at least a minimum step, but a very strong harmonization in many fields: contract law, tort law, consumer law in general, labor law. So it has taken time. And if Europe does not act quickly, between marks, because law is very slow by definition, but if the European Union does not act quickly, there is a risk that national countries are going to have their own legislations. And let me say that we are just seeing that in minor cases. For example, if we look at smart cars, autonomous cars, we have at least 5 or 4 countries in Europe that step by step are introducing small aspects of regulation. And this will be a pity because, as I said, the model of integration and the harmonization of rules in the European Union is so well built, in my view, as a lawyer, as a citizen, that we have to protect this idea. So taking into consideration all these aspects, we have at least three important legislations to come. Also, in addition to the cybersecurity legislation, in addition to privacy legislation that are already in force and have a deep influence on these topics. But what is yet to come? The Artificial Intelligence Act, as we said, we had the last approval just a few days ago. So we expect to have the final rules in a short time. We also have a proposal of directive on product liability. And this was an essential directive in Europe because for the first time since 1985, all rules on product liability were set on strict liability in Europe. Well, once again, UK had some different, slightly different approaches to that, but in the end, it was a liability that was essential for the protection of victims of defective products. And it also set the grounds for many aspects of tort law in Europe. And then once again, a third proposal of directive concerning non-contractual liability of artificial intelligence. Let me say that this is the one I have some difficulties in approaching this directive, but anyway, it will be a directive on non-contractual liability. I will tell you later, if there is time, why I have some substantial doubts on that. So what is the approach overall? It's a risk-based approach according to the precautionary principle. What does it mean? It means that if we look at the Artificial Intelligence Act, we can see that we have a system where the legislature has tried to focus on the different uses of artificial intelligence. And there are activities that are not allowed, too risky for what? For the challenge for fundamental values. And so this type of activity cannot be performed. That's very strong because it means that technically the market is ready to use these, for example, some form of biometrical surveillance or other forms that go very deeply in manipulating, for example, the mind or the thoughts of citizens. Well, these are all uses of artificial intelligence that are in principle prohibited. There are only exceptions, for example, where the identification, the biometrical issues are really necessary for anti-terroristic activities or some aspects like that. But activities that are not allowed, too risky. Then we have the large part of high risk activity. What does it mean? These activities are allowed even if they imply a high risk for fundamental values. And so what is the technical solution? The technical solution is that there is a system of supervision, in some cases access to the market. And there's also a suggestion, but it's yet to be, for an insurance of this risk, so that in case some damages occur, victims are also protected by the presence of insurance. This has yet to be completely solved from the legal point of view. And then, of course, there are normal or raw risks. So it's an approach based on the risk. And as you see, all these activities can be the high risk and the lower medium risk activities can be used in sustainability issues. So first of all, as I said, I would like to mention some aspects, but very quickly, of how these overall forms of system of AI are sustainable. So the first question is artificial intelligence sustainable in itself? So sustainability of AI. Well, here, if we go back to the ESG approach, we can have, of course, different grounds of analysis. I will not go into details, but of course there is a very basic need to consider if artificial intelligence system, and so companies, professionals, users of artificial intelligence system respect the taxonomy, respect the goals of sustainability. In particular, first of all, with reference to environmental sustainability. Here we have, to tell the truth, a lot to do, because these studies were a little late. When there is a new, it's like when trains arrived, it's something new, we have to let the market proceed. So even with artificial intelligence, this evaluation of the sustainability of artificial intelligence systems was a little late to appear. But of course, there is no doubt that we can assume what even the European Parliament said in the report on the matter in 2020, that of course they consume energy, a lot of energy for training. Sustainability, artificial intelligence has to be trained, built, because it has to have a body, hardware in some way, and it has to be trained. Artificial intelligence needs a lot of energy to be trained. I really don't remember data, but I can tell you some bibliography on that eventually. And of course, I was so surprised about the amount of energy that is used to make artificial intelligence systems work, even before being used for training. And on the other side, there's the issue of, is AI socially sustainable? It's very linked to economically sustainable, because this implies support also from countries, from the state, from governments. But in the end, is this socially sustainable? What does it mean? When we produce hardware for artificial intelligence, where are the debris of these? Where do we do the energy? What is the impact on local communities? And once again, concerning social sustainability, is AI system available for everybody? Or are we just talking about systems that are used in some countries or some communities within some countries, because they might be costly? And so there is this issue of sustainability of artificial intelligence. And so in order to explain a little better the second aspect of social sustainability of AI, and to also have an approach on how sustainability can be helped or compromised by artificial intelligence, I will deal with two examples of applications. The first one, as I promised, concerns smart cars and smart mobilities. You see here problems of mobility, especially with cars. Traffic jams, something that is really bad for people, time-consuming, stress and anxious behaviors connected to traffic jams. One problem, congestion of cities. The other problem, extremely important in all countries, more in some countries, but a general problem, safety on the roads. And the dirt aspects, these are just examples. You see here a nice lady, and the dog is quite scared to be beside the lady. But the problem is that, of course, there are people that risk to be cut out from mobility. Think about the fact that people are getting older and older, so there might be limitation on their mobility and also for driving, or physical disabilities that do not allow many people to go by themselves in the car driving. So looking at the application, we can say that there is no doubt that application of AI system can be very useful for sustainability. First of all, environmental sustainability. For example, if we think that traffic jams and traffic problems can have a recurrent or temporary causes, well, it is sure, because it's been proven by researches up to now, that many causes of recurrent traffic jams can be reduced by artificial intelligence systems. Because, of course, what artificial intelligence systems do in connection with satellite geolocalization, cars and smart cities, because it's a connection among different entities, well, this can help a lot. Improve driving efficiency. Data talk about 15–20% of best efficiency in driving, and this can have a very positive impact on the environment, of course, but also social sustainability. I'm just making very fast examples because there are a lot of things to talk about, but think about social sustainability, as I said. Artificial intelligence connected and used by vehicles in smart cities, because there is also the need to create the correct habitat for these vehicles, could allow mobility also for old people, as I said, for people with physical disability. It could also, in this way, reduce inequalities and also risk of exclusions of some people from the mobility system. It could also improve life of normal drivers because, of course, it can be a more relaxed way of driving. And I think that many aspects would be interesting to analyze with reference to the contract of selling of cars at this proposal, but it's another topic for researchers to consider. And most of all, how many human lives could be saved? Because artificial intelligence using artificial intelligence cars are programmed not to violate traffic rules, and they will respect the limits of the roads. And so in many cases, they should contribute, according to professionals studying this topic, to save human lives. So life and health of people, that's an essential issue of social sustainability. Of course, there might also be problems. The first one is to finance this innovation, because AI systems are generally on new cars that are also very good from an energy point of view, but they are quite costly, quite expensive car. They need innovation of cities in order to make these cars circulate. And what about cons? So if we look at the pros, where artificial intelligence system use of mobility are good for the environment, for social sustainability, there are also cons, contrary effects. So, for example, once again, we always need new cars to be updated, to be ready to use this system, but also social adverse effect, impact on community, impact on also discriminating issues, because this system do not only need geolocalization, but in many cases, they also need, for example, for saving human lives, to monitor the driver, to collect data. Data collection is extremely relevant in this aspect. And so these are all issues that has to be taken into very serious consideration when analyzes the pros and cons of AI in mobility connected to sustainability. And this has an impact, of course, on on regulations. Once again, motor liability is extremely harmonized in some aspects in Europe, insurance and so protection of victims. This will imply a complete reversal from the, for example, the insurance of the driver to the insurance of the producer of the car. And this is essential to assure the real protection of fundamental rights. Then there are also very sensitive issues connected on, and that's a problem that always arises with AI system. I talked before about training the AI system, because it's like a child. It has to be given some preliminary rules and then to be trained. And who's going to give the rules to the AI system? You have here the experiment of the MIT in the US, the moral machine. What are the instructions that are you going to give to the AI system? For example, are you instructed the car to kill, so to say, or to hit old people instead of young people, to hit, of course, if you say goods instead of person, that's obvious, but 2 persons instead of 3, a young people instead of an old people instead of a young people, or, for example, analyze the environment. The moral machine experiments, I don't know if you have tried that, but raises a lot of questions, because what are the ethical instructions that you give to the machine? And even the easiest one, you have to save lives as a first instance instead of goods. Is it always true that it's better? Suppose there is a gas station that can then destroy the lives of many other people. Is the moral machine or the instruction that you have given the artificial intelligence able to analyze the secondary effects? So it's very questioning on that. And we always have to think that we have the principle of non-discrimination in Europe that should be the paramount. I will go quite quickly because I don't want to take the time of the colleague who's talking after me. Let's talk about another example, the use in the medical and assistance sector. Extremely important uses in this sector for many aspects, for diagnosis, analyze information, for robotic surgery, where there is, of course, the human approach, the human intelligence, the medical staff, but there might also be the artificial intelligence managed system. Assistance to old people, to people who need everyday care. So many uses in the medical and assistance sector. But of course, there's always the need to have a human in command approach. But of course, that might be very important pros using artificial intelligence according to, in particular, social sustainability. Because if you have AI systems that replace some activities of human assistant or activities, there's the possibility to free resources for a better treatment of people. Then there is the aspect of proximity. If you think, for example, of the presence of medical devices connected to telemedicine, distant medicine, it can, of course, reduce distances among the medical staff and the final patient. It can also support in the discovery of new medicine, in clinical treatment decisions, in analyzing, once again, a large amount of data and suggesting solutions on how to use these data. So very positive application of AI in the medical sector, and very positive also if observed in the perspective of social sustainability. But regulators have to foresee, is it possible that there are also bad uses of AI? Well, there might be, in fact, The first one is that this system, and the more this system are intelligence and even with human appearance, they create a vulnerability, a sort of dependence of the patient, of the people treated. There are issues concerning risk of privacy violation, for example. And there are also some a little hidden risks, because of, if we think to some of the prohibited uses of AI that I mentioned at the beginning, well, the boundaries in practice are not always so clear. And think, for example, of cases in which as we said, there's the use of artificial intelligence system in the activity, for example, or setting priorities in triage in hospital, in the system of allocation scarce resources. Okay, now doctors, medical staff, hospitals do that already, but we know how they do it. We have seen that dramatically during the pandemic period. But what about the rules followed by the algorithmic decision? Is that always transparent? Is that always in compliance with the non-discrimination rules? And if we look at the Artificial Intelligence Act in preparation, there's a clear knowledge that this is a very high risk. And in fact, if you go to the Annex 3, for example, where artificial intelligence systems are classified, if you look at the high risk activities, there's a clear reference to artificial intelligence used in order to manage access and enjoyment of essential private and public services, eligibility for public assistance benefits and services, dispatch or establish priorities in emergency first response services. So what are the rules to be followed once again? Is it better to give the treatment, the oxygen mask to a young person instead of an old person, a woman instead of a man, a person that has more, according to the very fast analysis of information, possibility to survive instead of a person who has less possibility to survive? Of course, even doctors, professionals do that. We know there are protocols. Sometimes it's an unwritten protocol that operates. But in any case, there's always an on-site evaluation. Here you have to give priorities, because then it is the machine that decides. But who gives the priorities at the beginning? Who gives the rules to the child, so to say, who will then be able to? And then I don't even go in the black box discussion on artificial intelligence. So the fact that every expert, engineers, IT experts says that there is, in any case, a sort of black box in the process of artificial intelligence working. But even if we leave these apart and we remain to the basic, who gives the instructions to follow? Algorithmic decision follows subsequent choices, of course. So they have to start from a training rules. Who gives them instruction? So in this case, there might be problems that clearly focus on what we have also defined as social sustainability. And of course, other aspect would be connected to the possibility of communities to have these AI systems. Are they available for everybody, for every communities, or are they a risk that some communities and the differences among communities will be even more important in the future? So in the end, we have seen that there are incredible advantages in using sustainable AI for reaching environmental and sustainability goals. There are also risks. So what can we do? What is the role of the legislator? What it is our role as a whole? Someone say that there is a need for political, high level political stewardship. And that's important. forward-looking. Here, more than in other cases, we need forward-looking legislators. So there must be a cooperation among different professions of the society, because the legislature needs the support of technical resources, of academics, of practitioners, of every field involved. There is the need to have rules that might be probably difficult to approve because they might in some way compromise European, in particular, I'm talking about the European legislation, to be companies and actors, but at the same time, if the priority is social sustainability and environmental sustainability, this rule have to protect citizens, environmental, and eventually even animal issues and rights. And here there is a big role of finance, because as I said, the state, the governments, the European Union institution knows that this is very costly, very expensive, but at the same time they are ready to finance. But that's also a role for private institutions, what we call sustainable finance. So there is a call that even the European Union in the Green Deal makes to the finance world. Banks, insurers, they have to support the transition, the just transition. And this could in the end encourage a correct business behavior. There's a new call to conduct rules. We have seen that also in the letters that have been signed by the most of the companies involved. And in the end, and I will really close, there's also a call to consumer, to everybody, because of course we are the ones who uses every day this system. And so there must be an awareness in consumers that always have to have a responsible approach. Professionals are already liable in many cases. In the English language, I like this distinction among liability and responsibility. In many other European languages, we don't have it. In French or in Italian, we only talk about responsabilità, which imply an interior responsibility and an external responsibility, so liability. In English, you have these two approaches, and I think that for the moment, every consumer and citizen has also to have a responsible approach to the use of artificial intelligence, also in the perspective of sustainability. I close here. I'm sorry if I went very fast on some topics, but as I said, we are open to questions now.
Thanks so much, Diana.
Thank you.
Lots of opportunities, lots of questions. I think a lot of it is also about governance. How will we govern all of this? We have Theodora Christo, who is an expert in sort of transnational law and governance, who will short intervene. Sorry, we're running out of time completely. So a few minutes, Theodora.
No problem. I can go quickly. So thank you very much, Professor Cerini. It's a very comprehensive presentation on both sustainability and artificial intelligence, which means I need to say even less. And, you know, there are many potential positive contributions that AI can make to the sustainable transition agenda, whether it's in the healthcare that you mentioned, in energy, in agriculture, finance, migration, justice. There's a whole panoply of positive impacts that sustainability can have. And for a change, I'm going to only focus on the positives. That's not to say that there aren't negatives. And Professor Cerini, you went through like the attempts to regulate AI because it needs to be responsible. It needs to be adopted and used in a fair and just way. And another hat that I wear is as a member of the International Bar Association's working group on AI and human rights. And through that, we are contributing to the work of the Council of Europe and the Committee on Artificial Intelligence, who is currently drafting a treaty. But alongside the treaty, they recognize the importance of human rights as a guidance, as a framework for self-regulation by businesses through the adoption of the principle of due diligence. So that is all very important. the few words that I want to say is in an area which I've come across quite accidentally, which is trade. And this work I do through a centre that I have set up with Professor John Taylor called the Centre for Applied Sustainable Transition Law, which does exactly what you touched upon, Professor, towards the end of your presentation, which is the important role that law has to ensure that any transformation and any transition is done in a sustainable way. And so when we were asked to help work on the agenda towards digital trade, and in particular through encouraging and assisting states to adopt the model law on electronic transferable records, whether it's through full adoption or alignment, we initially thought, well, what's this got to do with sustainability? But actually, it has a lot to do with sustainability. So our work at the moment we conduct together with the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, and you can download the report with using the QR code there. We also work with the International Chamber of Commerce, and we have set up with them a legal technical assistance task force, which will help states do exactly this, adopt the model law or align with the model law. Now, when it comes to trade, trade is paper-based. It's a paper-based process. There's something like 4 billion pieces of paper floating through the system a year to accommodate the requirements of trade laws. Each trade transaction needs something like 27 documents, and God knows how many copies of those. All these have to be in hard copy. They have to have wet signatures. You have to go from one governmental office to another authority to get it signed. So you can already see the negative impact that this has on the environment, whether it's through the use of paper or simply the carbon emissions that are used in transferring and transporting all these paper-based documents. Add to that the fact that, paper documents can get lost. Fraud can be committed on these paper documents, the delays that are caused by lost papers, and so forth. And so this transition to electronic or digital records, will have a tremendous impact on sustainability, because as you reduce barriers to trade, you increase facilitation of global trade, you help lift people out of poverty, which is the first one there. But then you can see as we go through all the different sustainable development goals themselves, how this one simple act of state giving functional equivalence to electronic records that they do with paper documents means that, I've got some facts here, and the facts are tremendous. Across the Commonwealth, it's estimated that legal reform, simply adopting this model law, would bring $1.1 trillion in economic benefit. In the UK alone, the ability to use digital documents instead of paper-based processes would improve small to medium enterprise efficiency by 35%, cut the number of processing days by 75%, and free up efficiency savings of £224 billion. So in essence, digitizing the documents would generate £25 billion in new economic growth for small, medium-sized enterprises, together with $1 billion in new trade finance. And so what we see is like economic growth, but not economic growth for the rich, but economic growth in a very inclusive way. A lot of these small to medium sized enterprises are women owned and women operated. And so increasing their inclusivity in the trade would also then have a positive effect on improving gender equality. And then this page is really just essentially about the obvious. You cut out the paper, it means that you reduce the amount of paper that's circulating, you're adopting more responsible consumptions, you have a more positive impact on the climate, and so forth. But what is also really interesting is that if you have all of this trade information digitally, you're able to then convert your trade processes, whether as a government or as a business, into a more sustainable process. And that's because all the data at the moment is floating around the world in billions of pieces of paper. And what do you do with that data? Whereas if you have it all digitally, then you're able to do a lot more about this data. You're able to use the data to analyze your own processes as a business to see where you can make savings, where you can improve your businesses, where you can make a more sustainable transition. You can use this data in the disclosures, and you went through some of the laws that are coming up in terms of increasing disclosure obligations that we place on companies. If they have all this data digitally, they're able to make these disclosures more accurately. In transportation, you're able to use geotech, and AI is able to then process all of the data that you have to see again, am I using and conducting my business in the most efficient way, or are there efficiencies that I can take advantage of? You move out of transportation and trade directly, you can move into the insurance world, which Francisca there knows a lot more than me. But if insurance companies have this data, then they're able to use it more effectively to more accurately predict risk, and therefore more confidently take risks that they won't necessarily be able to take unless they had this data. Another area is finance. And here, here, for example, credit rating agencies are notorious for not being very good. Their predictions about the creditworthiness of individuals and of companies is based on historical data, which isn't really representative of what they are capable of in the present or in the future. And so if you have all of this data and you're able to engage with AI to make more accurate predictions of the future, your companies are more able to access finance. And in particular, I have agriculture there. If you think of smallholder farmers in emerging markets, their access to finance is zero because they don't have that track record that's required by credit rating agencies to get the finance. But if you're able to record what they're planting, you use AI and the data in terms of weather predictions, in terms of crop efficiency, there you're able to increase inclusivity, access to finance, and so forth. So really, like, one simple step of digitizing trade documents, like we're talking here trade international, but trade local as well, you're able to open up a whole world of sustainable transitions that could help facilitate inclusivity and improve gender equality. So I just went through that really quickly. It's just a little snapshot of an example that I'm currently involved in. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much, Theodora. Are there any quick questions in the audience? I think you also read us some cookies. So what we could do is also eat some cookies and continue conversation. Alex, you wanted to, yeah, go ahead. I'll give you the microphone so people can follow.
Thank you very much, Professor. I have about, I think, 2-3 questions. One is the question of AI, your comments on how you think AI will help to solve the measurability question on sustainability. Yeah, I would like your comment on what you think AI can do in terms of measuring sustainability. Yeah, because I think that's one of the issues we have, to say, yes, you need to, be compliant with all this, taxonomy that we are putting up. I think that AI could make a contribution, but I would appreciate your comment on that. The second question is whether you think the courts, because we are looking at a justice system, it's not just the laws, it's also the enforcement of the laws, the interpretation of the laws. Could there be need for retooling, in the sense that, we are dealing with judges who are used to a life without AI. Now you're dealing with AI. How will that look like? What do you think would need to happen? Thank you.
So what concerns the first question, of course, AI systems and application can help also in the measuring of sustainability issues, for example, in the regulations already approved directive and regulation, and also in the documents by the EU institution, these aspects is really clear. AI system can be a crucial tool for measuring, because even when we talk about taxonomy,
first of all, it's a complex system. It's based on the analysis of an incredible amount of data. Then there are, for example, the duties of companies to disclose. This is all connected to given a picture of how sustainable a company and activity is. And of course, AI system can help to measure these ratings, these different elements that have a legal approach to consider. So there is a legal toolbox to be first set, but then the toolbox is performed with the analysis of data. So it is essential, and the amount of data to be analyzed in order to assess the sustainability of an activity or another is essential. But also the other sector that was mentioned by the colleague in agriculture, in every aspect where artificial intelligence, where sustainability is required, so everywhere. So the question is, yeah, the answer is yes, it can be very useful, and there's a specific approach to this, and also on how artificial intelligence have to be built and managed by not just the users, but the producers of the artificial intelligence system. So in this case, there also, for example, the need for a specific transparency in the process of building the artificial intelligence system. So yes, the second is a very crucial question too, because in civil law, in criminal law, in administrative law, there are two grounds. The first one is the use of artificial intelligence in finding solutions, for example, in analyzing the behaviors, in analyzing the proof, in analyzing information, and in this case, it's a high-risk activity, because we know that from one side, it can be much better than existing system of proofs, for example, in criminal law. But on the other side, there are two grounds. On the other side, suppose there is a system of face identification, or it's like when the DNA proof came, it was considered 100% sure, because the declaration of a person can be debated, but the DNA is 100% sure. And then after some years, we discovered that the DNA is absolutely not 100% sure, not even 100% sure. So even with the use of artificial intelligence system, from one side, we can use them and rely on them. But on the other side, it can be very dangerous, because in the mind of the judge, you consider, well, it's been decided or proven by the artificial intelligence system, so it's sure. This can be a bias in the judgment of the judge that always is the master of the decision. So from one side, we have to set rules. And this is why in the list of high-risk activity, there is a specific mention to the use in criminal justice when it can have as a result, the use of data or information, facial recognition, but also other elements, behaviors, previous behaviors, or foresee the future too. So is it able or reliable, for example, for, I don't know, more released detention systems or so. So how much is this predictive use of artificial intelligence compliant with the principle that it is up to the judge to decide? So that's very delicate. The other aspect is training of judges, training of professionals who has to use artificial intelligence, because, for example, it can be very useful for administrating criminal, but also not only criminal, also civil justice. But at the same time, we have to train those who have to use artificial intelligence. And this is very important, of course. And once again, there's another element, the transparency of the use of artificial intelligence, because, for example, of course, there must always be the decision of the judge as the person who can use in support artificial intelligence. On the other side, even when it is not allowed, are we sure that maybe the judge is not relying on some results that he has reached using artificial intelligence systems. So there are a lot of aspects to take into consideration. The other topic, completely different, is decision reached only using artificial intelligence. This might be allowed in some cases for small controversies in order to speed up justice, but even in this case, you need, at least in many of the majority of the legal systems, specifically rules to allow that, because there's not the judge or the person, natural person, but there's another entity that is going to decide according to the combination of data. So many useful application also in justice, analyzing the number of information. Think about, I was talking with a criminal lawyer in Italy a few days ago, because we were discussing exactly about that, and he said, I remember a case when the criminal court has to analyze a room like this full of documents. So how many human resources do you need to do that? So this could be an incredible help, not just classifying, which is what the whole system of research did, but also analyzing them. But I always think that there's some curiosity or even some error, some mistake that human beings can perform that can be useful. Also, because if you leave artificial intelligence system to guide you to decisions, sometimes involvement in the decisions, in solution, is due to the fact that someone says, no, I don't want to follow the leading cases. I want to try something new. Maybe this time it's not reached the result, but maybe the next time there will be another judge that will consider the dissenting opinion or the dissenting approach. Is the machine learning or the AI system able to do that? Or is it so perfect and always follow the path? So the evolution of justice, is it compromised by the use of artificial intelligence in helping to take decisions? These are just ground.
Particularly relevant to common law systems like English law, where you do have this system of following precedent, but every now and then there is a shift. The court will decide on trying to distinguish the case on ever so slightly different grounds from previous decisions to arrive at a different result. And can artificial intelligence do that?
I think that's a very good note. I think this is a very good note to thank Diana for this love and Theodora for
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you with your colleagues here.